me well, didn't he? Okay, so that's what Dominic is saying, that there is National Executive Committee. So if you name it as National Executive Committee, we know. But when you come and say National Leadership of the NDC, what does it mean? All right. 2, Article 24, Functional Executive. It says, there shall be a Functional Executive Committee, membership of which shall be drawn from the National Executive Committee. So you know that all the members of the Functional Executive are also members of the National Executive. That's the way the NDC operates it. So if you write a letter and say that it is the decision has been taken by the Functional Executive, everyone knows where to go to either petition the decision or to challenge it. And that's a proper decision because it's coming from Article 24's Functional Executive. 24 created the Functional Executive and therefore they can act on behalf of the National Democratic Congress. Next one, Article 25. It says, there shall be established a Council of Elders composed of not more than 17 members, at least 4 of whom shall be women. So again, if you write a letter from the NDC stable and you say that it is from the the Council of Elders, it makes sense. That's what Dominic is saying. This is their letter they wrote to the speaker. Put the letter back on again and let's deal with it. And you know who you are dealing with. Johnson Asiedu Nketia. This is the leader they have. Johnson Asiedu Nketia. That's where you get this. Okay, so this is the letter. National Democratic Congress, a letterhead. And I'm challenging the NDC to come and show us historically, when have they ever written a letter that says national leadership of the party? They should tell us. Johnson Asiedu Nketia should come and tell us. When in the history of the 30 years of the NDC, have you written a letter entitled the source of the information to a group called National Leadership of the National Democratic Congress? What is this? So viewers, you are with me, aren't you? Young people, students, you are learning, eh? Okay. Dominic taught me, so I'm teaching you. Please learn, eh? What is National Leadership of the National Democratic Congress wishes to formally bring? Who is that person? Who is National Leadership of the National Democratic Congress? Where is it in the NDC Constitution? Who is the person? But that's the letter that Asiedu Nketia wrote. And that's the concern that Dominic Ayine has. He says, National Leadership of the National Democratic Congress. It's not there. There's nothing called National Leadership of the... So the speaker might just write back to them and says, NDC, who is National Leadership of the National Democratic Congress? Who is that? Is it the Functional Executive? Is it the National Executive? Is it the Council of Elders? Is it all of them put together? Is it Congress? For every party, Congress is the highest decision-making body. So they will write and say, Congress at its 25th meeting decided that so and so and so. That's how we write letters. Asiedu Nketia, doesn't he have a lawyer? Doesn't Johnson Asiedu Nketia have a lawyer? What is National Leadership of National Democratic Congress? What is that? Is that how a party chairman writes letters? I've been talking about this for a long time. Johnson Asiedu Nketia, this is what he's brought. This is how far he has brought us. Now he's writing letters and finding, as they say, a body team, then he's finding something to write. So he writes National Leadership of the National Democratic Congress. It is what? It means nothing. Play Dominic Ayine again, so people will understand what I'm saying. Dominic Ayine, this is the point that the Member of Parliament made. Former Deputy Attorney General.
And I'm not sitting here because of Muntaka. I am not sitting here because of Haruna Idrisu. In fact, I am not against Atufosin. Neither am I against Amabua. I'm not against Honorable Agoja. They are all my colleagues. But I'm here on the basis of principle. The principle of consultation which has been established, okay, by the party in the selection of parliamentary leadership cannot be abandoned, in this manner. And the fact that a letter written to Mr. Speaker by the General Secretary without the endorsement of FEC, without the endorsement of NEC, is dressed as a decision of the party. Now remember that I refer to others, 7. It says designated by the party. That letter is not a letter of the party. And I'm saying that from a legal technical point of view, it is not a letter of the party. And so if there has to be a letter from the party, then there has to be a meeting of FEC. The matter has to be tabled and a decision taken, and the principal officers can then be told or instructed by FEC to implement that decision, to convey the decision to Mr. Speaker. So this is all that I can say. Some of us are fighting on the basis of principle. We think that what has happened is an affront to the dignity of the caucus. It is not about personalities.
All right, so that's Dominic Anyini. Let me just wrap up this part. So this is Order 7, and I was talking about superior legal learning that I've been talking to some lawyers, and they are challenging the position that I took on Tuesday, and I think I concede to the challenge that is being made. So on Tuesday, I said here that Order 7 of Parliament Standing Orders, its interpretation, it describes who the minority leader is, and it says, minority leader means a member of parliament designated by the party or parties and or members forming the minority as their recognized leader. Okay, so I was of the view in my preliminary assessment that the reference to party or parties includes the party outside parliament. I'm being told, and I think I concede to that the reference to party here means inside parliament. It doesn't mean the party outside parliament, because as they say in law, the interpretation of absurdity. It would be absurd to suggest that Justin Kodua, sitting there as a general secretary of the New Patriotic Party, can tomorrow write to the speaker and say that we have changed the leadership. It doesn't work like that. There's another argument that came in when we're practicing in this, when we're discussing here. One of the young lawyers said that. He told me that the party executives are elected by members of the party. The member of parliament is elected by all the people in the constituency. And in the skirt and blouse voting that we saw in 2020, at least 37 constituencies voted for a parliamentarian on the left and a presidential candidate on the right. And so the member of parliament has obtained votes from his constituency from people who are both NDC and MPP, including those who are neither. Therefore, the mandate carried by members of parliament in the House is superior to the mandate carried by the national executive, democratically superior in terms of the context of the vote. And I agree with that point. So it shouldn't be in a democracy that those who have a less democratic elevation should be able to make decisions for those who have a substantial democratic elevation. I hope that's clear. So members of parliament are being said to have a more substantial democratic election than the leadership of the party, because members of parliament are presented to a constituency and every Ghanaian there votes. So their mandate is superior, and therefore the party leadership should not be able to override except by voting. Members of parliament should determine to vote themselves. As we go along the conversation, you will get it. So that's where we end the first part. Let's move on now to Kwesi Pratt Jr. My good uncle Kwesi Pratt Jr. came up on Good Morning Ghana in a conversation with Randy Abbey, and they had a lot to say about this matter. Here's Kwesi Pratt.
When I heard it first, I said, what is wrong? Very weird decision. And it gets worse when you hear the justifications. You understand?
What was weird about it? For example, the MPP, the last parliament, was that the 7th? The previous one? Okay. They had a leadership. When the 8th, we got the 8th, they did a shake-up to their leadership. They changed some, brought in some new people, maintained some. So Adjoa Safo and others went out, Anodom Prayer, others came in. The NDC maintained theirs. They didn't effect any changes. They now say they are effecting the change. What's weird about it?
Now let me explain what is weird about it. I mean, look, in this business, timing is sometimes 90% of the game plan.
It's the most sensible.
Timing. So if you look at timing, this is wrong, and wrong again.
On all fours.
On all fours. I mean, if I'm sitting in the NDC leadership, and this is the time when all this issue about COVID expenditure, is playing out, where Auditor General's report is playing out. Look at the issues, National Cathedral issue is playing out and so on. What you do is you go and throw in this letter. I mean, incredible. You remember, there have been cases in Britain. I can't remember the names, but there were cases in Britain where actually politicians were looking for the best time to do certain things.
Yeah.
And that's all aimed at focusing the public attention on things and so on. If you look at it from that perspective, this letter is strange. I mean, to say the least, so very strange. That's number one. Number two, I mean, yesterday, I was so alarmed by what is happening that I decided to call up, people on the minority side. And I'm not exaggerating. I spoke to about 10 members of parliament from the minority side. none of them knew that this was going to happen. It took them by surprise. Now, you are choosing a leadership for a group, and you don't find it necessary to consult them. Randy, is this not incredible?
They say that the idea.
It's incredible.
But see, I hear.
Stay with us, viewers, stay with us. Just hold on to your coffee and your cornflakes and your Awuza cocoa for a while. Stay with us. Now, that's Kwesi Pratt. Let's move on to Johnson Asiedu Nketia. When he articulated the reasons for the changes that he is advocating or the changes that he has made before a press conference. Here's Asiedu Nketia.
The truth of the matter is that the 2024 election is going to be fought around the economy. So the debate basically is going to be about the economy. You know it and I know it. And so if you are a party serious in fighting and winning elections, you must put your best foot forward so that you can win the debate. You can't just go and be telling people that the economy is in shambles, the economy is in shambles when you are not able to put your experts there to be able to communicate to Ghanaians how you...
Please stay with us for a little bit. Okay, so that's Kwesi Pratt Jr. That's Johnson Asiedu Nketia, my very good uncle, good friend, former neighbor, nice guy. Okay, that's Asiedu Nketia speaking. Now, he gives the reasons. He has been compelled to give a reason because he purportedly changed the leadership of the majority, of the minority in parliament without making reference to NEC, without making reference to FEC. As I'm talking, and these people are sending me messages. Somebody says that Joseph Yamin said in Kumasi today that the decision was a FEC decision. Fair enough, but it's not reflected in the letter. If you are writing to the speaker, you write to the speaker and said, you can even say the functional executive created by Article 23 of the NDC Constitution has hereby blah, 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 blah. Then we know who to deal with, but you don't say what he said. Anyway, here's Kwesi Pratt expressing total bemusement about this reason on economy. Here it is.
It gets worse.
Okay.
I mean, when this statement had been released and the backlash started unfolding, now we started hearing reasons why this was done.
Okay.
Oh no. Boy, oh boy. Have you read the reasons? Read the graphic, it is there. I can't believe it. We are told, for example, that the next election is going to be fought on the economy. And because the next election is going to be fought on the economy, you need an economist.
Which election has not been fought on the economy?
Randy, don't kill me.
No, which election has not been fought on the economy? At least in the Fourth Republic.
But Master, so you need an economist to lead the parliamentary group. My goodness. This is some reason. Okay, if that is the case, then perhaps we need the most qualified economist to lead the pack. If it's about your academic qualification and so on, is Atufosin the most qualified economist in parliament?
All right, so that's Kwesi Pratt Jr. talking about how scandalized he was by the reasons articulated by Johnson Asiedu Nketia. Next, I'm going to play you a tape of Sam George. Now, Sam George spoke passionately on Good Morning Ghana here in Metro TV, just the studio next door. I could walk there actually, and then you can see it. It's just next door. All right. Now, when Sam George was speaking, he didn't put it in the context that I'm coming to put it, but I'm going to put it in a very interesting context of what Sam George said. Now, what Sam George said is a clear distinction between the leadership styles of Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo here on my screen and Johnson Asiedu Nketia, my good friend. Now, listen carefully, viewers, when I play the tape. So, on the left of the screen is Samuel Ofosu-Ampofo, who was party chairman at a selection process where minority leaders were selected in January 2021. And the process that they went through to select those leaders, this is on 6th of January, 5th or 6th of January 2021, because Sam George says it's before the election of the speaker. They had a process, and that was led by Chairman Ofosu-Ampofo. Now, Johnson Asiedu Nkatia also has determined the process to change the minority leadership. So listen to the narration from Sam George, and it is the difference of leadership between Ofosu Ampofo, who the NDC have rejected, and Johnson Asiedu Nkatia, whom they have elected. Yes, Sam George.
I believe that their consultations may have been done at their level, but I believe that it was not far-reaching enough. I believe that a little more consultation, in this case engagements, could have happened. They consulted, based on what they have said publicly, with members of the Council of Elders and stakeholders in the party. After those consultations, they proceeded to write a letter to the Speaker. And that is where I think the crux of the matter is. Randy, I have heard the argument that when a president is going to appoint, he calls the person he's going to appoint. When they were going to appoint Ejapa Mensah, he received a call from the presidency telling him that the president has so chosen to appoint you or nominate you for this appointment. If he is going to be reshuffled from deputy energy minister to maybe finance minister to replace Ken Ofori-Atta, the president need not have an engagement with him. The president would literally announce it, and he needs not come back to parliament for vetting again, because he's been vetted once. Now, that is the logic being espoused by Adabraka on the need for engagements with the parliamentary caucus at the beginning of a parliament.
Who's Adabraka?
The national headquarters.
Oh, okay.
Yes. At the beginning of the session, where on the 4th of January 2021, I remember very well, 4th January 2021, we met in the DF Annan Hall in Parliament with the then leadership of the party. And there were conversations about who would lead the caucus. Adabraka again at that time came with a list of names and engaged the MPs who were going to be led by those people. When they came with those names, there were counter names from within the caucus. Now what happens is, with that engagement, the people who had counter nominations stood up and were heard. They gave the reasons why they thought changes should happen. There was a discussion amongst us as MPs with our national executive. Everybody had their say, and consensus was built. And then we all rallied around to give legitimacy to who became our leaders going into the 9th of the 6th and 7th, 2021, where we elected Speaker Bagbin. It's not as though Haruna, Aveji, Muntaka, Ahmed, and Doyo were just automatically imposed on us. No, there was engagement. And it's not as though everybody in the caucus wanted them to lead us in January 2021. There were counter nominations. But nobody questioned the legitimacy of the Haruna-led group in this 8th parliament, because everybody who had an opposing view was heard. And that person knows I was heard, but my position did not hold sway. And so you could not question their legitimacy. Now, when you do what you have done as Adabraka, without engaging the caucus, even if you won't engage the whole caucus, there are leadership. We have what we call extended leadership. There are regional leaderships. The problem I see MPs having, Randy, is not about the change. The problem in the caucus is not about the change. The problem in the caucus is not about capacity of the change, the people who are being changed. The problem of the caucus is the lack of engagement. The fact that as members of parliament, we heard about a change in our leadership on radio. And many of us had eggs in our faces because we said it is fake. Until Adabraka came out and said, yes, we wrote that letter. Around you, even senior high school, the headmaster doesn't sit in his office and just appoint who becomes head boy. Right now, they do manifesto. They do voting. And I remember very well in that meeting of the 4th of January, this issue came up about how our leadership in parliament is being selected or elected. And we looked at best practices across the world. Caucuses actually elect their leaders. And so we decided as a caucus to go ahead and put together a draft that will then codify on paper, in black and white, what the processes for the selection of leaders of our caucus should be. Unfortunately, we haven't worked on it or carried it through and couldn't get it ratified at the last Congress. And so today, it is left to convention. Because Randy, those who say that there is nowhere in our constitution where it says MPs must be consulted, there's nowhere in our constitution too where it says that a national executive should elect leadership for parliament. So the election of leadership...
But that has been a convention.
Absolutely. But the convention has also been engagement.
Okay.
You get the point I'm making? Because we've run this by convention, where the national executives have chosen. But they have engaged the caucus. Because Randy, why you need to engage the caucus is to prevent what we are seeing now. Because what you need as authority, as a leader in parliament, is the legitimacy from behind you. And that legitimacy from behind you comes from consensus. You know, I would make the point here, Randy, that look, a council of elders must step in quickly, call the outgone. I know I've been told that the individuals in the council of elders called members of the outgone leadership and spoke to them. But I hold the view that the way to resolve this matter is first and foremost within the next 24 to 48 hours. Our council of elders calling the two groups, the Haruna group, the Atu Forcing group, into one room. I have seen communication that says that Atu and Kwame met with Honorable Haruna yesterday, and they had productive
So this is...
All right, I deliberately made the videos long so that you can understand. So, Chairman Ofosu Ampofo, when it was his turn to determine it, had, as you heard some judge say, consultations, reasonableness. Let's go to Parliament and talk to them. This is, I said 5th or 6th. Actually, 4th January, the election results were declared sometime 10th or 11th of December, and parliamentarians put together a few issues, as we all know, and then finally we settled it. So on the 4th of January, as some judge said, Ofosu Ampofo, as chairman and leader of the party, went to meet the MPs and said that, what do we do? According to what some judge is saying, there were challenges. And then they came to a consensus, and a sort of election occurred, and then they agreed on the leaders. That was Ofosu Ampofo style. Johnson Asiedu Nketiah's style is that MPs heard it on radio and said it is fake. And he said, no, it's not fake, I've done it. That's who he is. Johnson Asiedu Nketiah, that is who he is. The man was my neighbor. I've told you. I know him. That is who he is. That's how he's not going to change anything. Nothing. All what they are saying, he probably hasn't heard it. He doesn't even care. He's asleep somewhere. He's taking his decision. He's gone to bed. You can shout all you want. That is the way he operates. And we don't like politicians like that. We are building a nascent democracy. We don't want any politician who is like that. It has to be consensus, consultation, law, paragraph, article, and then we move on. Less emotions, no ego, no power play, no I am up there, nobody can say anything about me, I'm the mosquito biting everybody. But that's what he is. Johnson Asiedu Nketiah's kind of leadership is what you heard some judge describe. And you see how surprised he is. And he's comparing it with a lot of nostalgia to Ofosu Ampofo's processes on 4th January 2021. Some judge is expressing a lot of nostalgia. He wishes that event on 4th January occurred again now. If anybody wants to change leadership, that's the reasonable way to go. But you might not get that with Johnson Asiedu Nketiah. You will not get that. You will get his way or no way. That's it. That's how it is. Okay, let's move on to another channel, another chapter of the conversation. Cletus Avoka, addressing the one of the two simultaneous conversations this morning, indicated that as far as they are concerned, this one, it is still the old leadership in charge. Here's Avoka.
More than this, about 70 people have signed a petition that we are going to summarize to you. But some of them had consented, even though they are still in their constituencies and are not yet here. Even this morning when we met, we were about 40 who met in the auditorium to take this, to concretize on this decision. And then, so it's a very short press conference that we are going to indicate. Let us start from the very word go that we have confidence in our national executive and we respect them as such. But a few days ago, our attention has been drawn to a letter addressed to the Speaker of Parliament, indicating that the leadership of the Minority Caucus has been reshuffled. We are on recess, by the Speaker's invitation, we are returning on the 7th of February 2023. So we are not yet in the House. But because of the exigencies of this situation, that is why some of us have rushed back to be able to participate in this. Against that background too, when the Speaker reads the letter to Parliament, the letter he has received from the Secretary of the party that indicating the reshuffle, it is when that letter is read to members of the House that it can take effect. As of now, we have already said we are not there. So as far as we are concerned, the current leaders of the House, Honorable Haruna Iddrisu, Muntaka and co, are deemed to still be in office. Now the purpose of this press conference, as I've indicated, is to try to maintain cohesion in the party, is to try to ensure that we remain as a body, that we still are an appealing group to the Ghanaian populace, and that they should trust us for December 2024. So our petition is going to the Council of Elders of the NDC. We are petitioning the Council of Elders of the NDC with a copy to the National Executive, with a copy to the Speaker of Parliament, and a copy of the said petition to the former flag bearer, Honorable John Dramani Mahama. His Excellency John Dramani Mahama. The basis for our petition is a prayer to suspend the reshuffle indicated by the National Executive of the party until such time, signed by the General Secretary of the party. The petition is signed by the General Secretary of the party. The basis of our petition is to appeal to them to suspend the suspension exercise until such time that it's a holistic meeting of stakeholders and consultation before we take a decision. We are saying so against the backdrop that the National Executive Committee of the party a few weeks ago decided that all appointees in the party and in Parliament should remain in office until after we have concluded the parliamentary primaries and the flag bearer primaries on the 13th of May this year. That all office holders and appointees should remain in office until the primaries are over. We are therefore surprised that the primaries are not yet taking place, they are not yet over, and a reshuffle is hitting the caucus of Parliament. We think that that is premature. We have also investigated and discovered that the National Executive Committee FEC and the National Executive Committee NEC, including the Council of Elders, did not have a formal meeting to take a decision on this matter. And then, of course, the caucus as a body was not consulted on this matter. And we think that that is quite not well in place. It is against the backdrop of this that we are humbly appealing to the National Executive of the party that they should suspend their current action and let the current officers, Haruna and his team, remain in office until such time that the primaries are over and we have a holistic stakeholder consultation before we decide on the way forward. In that case, the current executive that we, as I said, that sit in office should remain in office and steer the affairs of the caucus until such time that we advise ourselves. We want to pledge our support to the party. We are committed to the party. We are committed to the focus of the caucus to assist the party in the coming elections in December 2024 so that we can form government. So we are saying that without prejudice to the merits of those who have been appointed. No. We know that we are all members of Parliament, we are all competent. The Dr. Fosu Atu, and then the Kwame Aboja, and then the Ama Abua are very good parliamentarians. We have nothing against them. We trust them. But we are saying that the timing is not appropriate. The timing for a reshuffle now is not appropriate. And that the consequences are very, very grave for us and could negatively affect our fortunes come December 2024. It is against this background, the fact that there was no adequate and proper consultation within the ranks of the party, that we think that they should reconsider and suspend the current reshuffle until such time that we hold a meeting. Thank you very much.
All right, that was a long one, wasn't it? Okay, but we wanted to show you that so that we're bringing you the comprehensive story. So that really is the comprehensive story. So you saw Kwesi Pratt Jr. expressing his concern, Sam George, Sam George, Kwesi Pratt, and Dominic Ayeni all expressing their concerns. Now we go to the montage, and then we'll come back and do the pieces. So we have put some videos, interesting videos for you together to tell the story better, isn't it? So Johnson Asiedu Nketia and Kwesi Pratt will show you a video as if they are talking to each other. The reasons are bad, that kind of thing. We do that sometimes. You like, we'll do it again. We have done it already. We'll show it to you. All right, now then, let me link before we take the text messages. Get your text messages coming to Good Evening Ghana Official. Whether you disagree with us or you agree with us, whether you remember that we warned about Asiedu Nketia or you don't remember, still send us a text message on Good Evening Ghana Official on Facebook. Thank you very much, all of you who follow us on Facebook. Our following is growing. We are delighted that you are helping us to build a proper forum for discussion and ventilating issues in this country. Here is the montage telling the entire story of the NDC debacle with the choices of leaders in Parliament.
Tension is mounting at the Northern Regional Office of the NDC over the removal of Haruna Idrisu's minority leader. Supporters of the party on Wednesday marched at the office to demand the National Executive rescind their decision.
We are here as a members of coalition of youth groups belonging to the NDC to register our displeasure over the disrespectful and a wicked political decision by some national executive to illegally change the leadership of our party in Parliament at this crucial moment.
When I heard it first, I said, what is wrong? Very weird decision. If I'm sitting in the NDC leadership, and this is the time when all this issue about COVID expenditure, is playing out, where Auditor General's report is playing out. Look at the issues, National Cathedral issue is playing out and so on. What you do is you go and throw in this letter. And incredible, this letter is strange, to say the least, so very strange.
So if you are a party serious in fighting and winning elections, you must put your best foot forward so that you can win the debate. You can't just go and be telling people that the economy is in shambles, when you are not able to put your experts there to be able to communicate to Ghanaians how you will do things better.
It gets worse.
Okay.
When this statement had been released and the backlash started unfolding, now we started hearing reasons why this was done.
Okay.
Oh no, boy, oh boy.
The 2024 election is going to be fought around the economy. So the debate basically is going to be about the economy. You know it and I know it.
Oh no, boy, oh boy.
The truth of the matter is that the 2024 election is going to be fought around the economy.
Okay, if that is the case, then perhaps we need the most qualified economist to lead the pack. If it's about your academic qualification and so on, is Atufosin the most qualified economist in Parliament?
The 2024 election is going to be fought around the economy.
And I'm not exaggerating. I spoke to about 10 members of Parliament from the minority side. None of them knew that this was going to happen. It took them by surprise.
The principle of consultation which has been established, by the party in the selection of parliamentary leadership cannot be abandoned, in this manner. And the fact that a letter written to Mr. Speaker by the General Secretary without the endorsement of FEC, without the endorsement of NEC, is dressed as a decision of the party. Now remember that I referred to orders, 7. It says designated by the party. That letter is not a letter of the party.
I believe that their consultations may have been done at their level, but I believe that it was not far-reaching enough. I believe that a little more consultation, in this case engagements, could have happened. They consulted, based on what they have said publicly, with members of the Council of Elders and stakeholders in the party. After those consultations, they proceeded to write a letter to the Speaker. And that is where I think that the crux of the matter is.
And of course, they understand as a wing of the party, they need to work very closely with the leadership of the party to ensure that we can deliver the aspirations of our people, and especially being able to do what Ghana requires of us, which is to work towards taking out of power the most abysmal, the most incompetent, the most corrupt government in the history of our country.
The tension is mounting at the Northern Regional Office of the NDC over the removal of Haruna Idrisu's minority leader. Supporters of the party on Wednesday massed up at the office to demand the National Executive rescind their decision now.
We are here as a members of coalition of youth groups belonging to the NDC to register our displeasure over the disrespectful and a wicked political decision by some national executives to illegally change the leadership of our party in parliament at this crucial moment.
So that's our montage. Let's go to the text message and see what people are saying. Let's start with you, Mikael. What are they saying?
Right, so Junior Akbar watching us from Tamale says the NDC foot soldiers on there need to understand that nobody is saying no one must go, but the coup tactics of Asiedu Nketia are not democratic. Moving on, Albert says, good evening, Paul. This decision was solely orchestrated by Sami Jamfi, Asiedu Nketia and Fifi Kwete. In fact, they have demoted Haruna and Mutaka. Sir Bright watching us from Tantro Hill says, Paul, chairman is at the airport flying to Canada to holiday with his family while Rome burns Emperor Nero fiddles. Aaron Babako Kokomisa watching us from Latabia Okoshi says, I strongly believe that the NDC as a political party has a party organizational structure where members that hold a political office know that he or she is there for a particular grace period, or they rotate by internal party election. If there is nothing like that, then it stands to reason like their political party constitution is weak, and they will continue to encounter problems with regard to their decisions, which at the end do not augur well to the party and affect them during general election. Lastly, Mohammed from Darkuma Fadama says, Mr. Paul, in fact, it is not fair how the NDC make the changes, but I am so happy for the removal of Honorable Haruna and Muntaka because it's a big chance for the MPP from Northern Region to win more seats. Now, the NDC will know that Honorable Haruna is very, very important to the NDC, more than their Secretary Fifi and those who changed them in the Parliament. I'm very happy, and I know that my NPP Northern brothers are also happy. My greetings to my boss, Honorable Farouk Aliyu Mahama. To you, Karen, let's see what you have.
Okay, today, Paul, you are getting all the fans on your T-shirts. Louise, I used to say, hey, Mr. Adam Autry, this is your top day, be me rough. Don Diekutu says, nice shirt, Paul. And Obed Akuntu says, Paul, your shirt is very nice. Abdullah Abdurazak, the same Asiedu Nketia, accused the finance minister for his lack of consultation on the matter of the debt exchange program. Today, the same man failed woefully to consult the caucus of the minority and those who matter before coming out with such unpopular decision, which has created deep cracks in the NDC. From Joshua, he says, if it is about the economy, then Asiedu Nketia is not qualified to lead the party for 2024 general elections. The leader of parliament does not lead the party national campaign. So why using economy matters as a reason for changing the minority leadership? And lastly, from Ebenezer, good evening, Paul. A week without watching Good Evening Ghana is like leaving home without leaving house, keeping money on the table. You really explain things to the understanding of everyone. Keep it up. Over to you.
Okay, so coming from Kunta Kunte Shabo, he says, I'm very sad about a decision claimed to be coming from the party national executive without any effective consultation with the minority caucus, in particular the party regional and constituency caucus. The minority in parliament are very critical, the engine room and the main backbone that can project the NDC to power. The NDC losing a single member of their side will not help them looking at the circumstances. While the party had come out with a future plan to consult and their act of engagement, the new minority leader had gone to hold a presser, accepting the position which is in conflict. This is a total confusion. Also coming from Citizen Francis, it is clearly visible that the NDC is in turmoil and there is danger ahead. The first political party to hold 2 live conferences on national TV and radio announcing various parliamentary minority leaderships concurrently. This is what happens when leaders fail to consult extensively or engage sufficiently stakeholders in all human endeavor. We had enough reasons to break the 8, but this is phenomenal. Regards to Dr. Mahamudu Bawumia, the next president of the Republic of Ghana. This is coming from Charles Redu, and he says, Esiodun Ketia wants to prove that Rawlings is no more, and as a chairman, he can control the party. He will soon be contesting for the presidential position. Lastly, coming from Abdullah Abdul Razak, fast forward, the current happenings in NDC can't be linked to what happened under the NPP some years back. So our NDC friends should eat a humble pie and learn from the NPP. Without doubt, this decision taken by someone who failed woefully to collate their results is now talking about economics and picking someone to lead based on his economic prowess. NDC can't be the alternative. And lastly, from Dr. Charger, Esiodun Ketia is exhibiting his mosquito leadership. Over to you.
Okay, so from Kwesi, sorry, Paul, today you do all. And from Wilfredo Usujasi, superb decision by all standards by Paul about the NDC Parliament coup d'etat issues. Listening to it, I'm really scandalous and perplexed. From Edu, Prince Kweku, let's pray for our leaders always to prevent some bad decisions. God day, we day. From Anua Sadat, after an engagement with some of our constituency and regional executives, you will realize the shock they received when the news and also such decisions will bring to the party. And lastly, from Idrisu Salim, Asiedu and Fifi intentionally did it because the likes of Haruna and Muntaka ate the favorites of Mahama.
Okay, so let's come back. Thank you very much. It's now 17 minutes past the top of the hour. At 10 o'clock, this is Good Evening Ghana, and it's live here from Adabraka with a bit of energy. It's a Thursday, so our energy is going down. So we need to whip it up, isn't it? All right. I found something interesting in the videos that we showed you. So I asked them to redo it. So I put, as I told you, Kwesi Pratt and Johnson Asiedu Nketia sort of talking to each other back to back. Have a look. Some MPP supporters who called me as I was coming into the studio.
What is wrong? Very weird decision. If I'm sitting in the NDC leadership, and this is the time when all this issue about COVID expenditure, is playing out, where Auditor General's report is playing out. Look at the issues, National Cathedral issues playing out and so on. What you do is you go and throw in this letter. I mean, incredible. This letter is strange. I mean, to say the least, so very strange.
So if you are a party serious in fighting and winning elections, you must put your best foot forward so that you can win the debate. You can't just go and be telling people that the economy is in shambles, when you are not able to put your experts there to be able to communicate to Ghanaians how you do things better.
It gets worse.
Okay.
I mean, when this statement had been released and the backlash started unfolding, now we started hearing reasons why this was done.
Okay.
Oh no, boy, oh boy.
The 2024 election is going to be fought around the economy. So the debate basically is going to be about the economy. You know it and I know it.
Oh no, boy, oh boy.
The truth of the matter is that the 2024 election is going to be fought around the economy.
Okay, if that is the case, then perhaps we need the most qualified economist to lead the pack. If it's about your academic qualification and so on, is Atufosin the most qualified economist in Parliament?
the 2024 election is going to be fought around the economy.
And I'm not exaggerating. I spoke to about 10 members of parliament from the minority side. None of them knew that this was going to happen.
All right, no, that's sorry, that was a little mistake at the beginning. Sorry about that. But that's just a montage. Okay, let's continue with the stories now. Now, more fallout. So we are looking at all the fallouts from the decision of the leadership of the National Democratic Congress, led by Johnson Asiedu Nketia, to make some changes in Parliament. Now, here's Alhassan Suhuyini, member of Parliament for Tamale North, and he's writing on his social media platform, and I want to walk you through what he says. So it starts as follows. Next time, please put Suhuyini's photograph there. He says, like life, death and taxes, change is the other constant. Therefore, I'm not against constructive changes born out of an exhaustive consultation process involving key stakeholders of the party to our front bench as a minority group. Clearly, he says, however, that is not what has happened, no matter how well-intentioned it may be. Worst of all, whoever is advising the strategy of the proposed new leaders is feeding into a normal human extreme greed and selfishness, perhaps because those people are unable to untame their greed too. This is heavy from Suhuyini. The second paragraph, let's look at it again. He says, clearly, comma, that is not what has happened, comma, no matter how well-intentioned it may be, full stop. Worst of all, he continues, whoever is advising the strategy of the proposed new leaders is himself feeding into a normal human extreme greed and selfishness. Well, Suhuyini, human extreme greed and selfishness is not normal. So, Alhaji, please, don't say this. It's not normal. The things you are saying, human extreme greed and selfishness cannot be normal. It's not normal. So, well, let me read it again. It's feeding into a human extreme greed and selfishness, comma. Perhaps, he says, because those people are unable to untame their greed too. So he's identifying two groups of greedy people. Those who are making the decision, supporting the decision with strategy, and those who are themselves implementers of the decision. He's identifying both groups as greedy. Well, we don't know. Continue. He says, given the composition of our caucus as against our opponents and the expectation of what we can achieve together and the reality of what we cannot, even if we are together, it will take extreme greed and selfishness to want to lead this NDC caucus at all costs at this time without a toss about long-term consequences on the caucus and the party. Suhuyini is angry. He says, I wonder why it seems people think they can intimidate the entire caucus into submitting to an authority we consider inappropriately constituted. Some may, he says, but not majority of us. And it's not personal, it's conviction. It is principled. Wow. Wow. Viewers, wow. Wow, 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 wow. It hasn't ended. So, Lawyer Egbenya then comes up and says, some good points raised, Honorable, speaking to Suhuyini. He said, I'm just wondering, how does the current mode of changing the leadership differ from those of the past, especially the one that brought the outgoing leaders into office? Suhuyini promptly replies. He says, Lawyer Egbenya, I will tell you, regional caucuses were made to vote. General Mosquito was the elected commissioner, and Honorable Ernest Nogbe was the returning officer in the D.F. Annan Auditorium of Parliament. That's how we settled on the current leaders. Fantastic. Comes back to my point about Ofosu Ampofo's leadership, General Mosquito's leadership. Apparently, we are now finding out, we are not part of the caucus, so we don't know. But Alhassan Suhuyini is telling us, and we believe him. Now, he's saying that in the first instance, in the 4th January 2021 that Sam George referred to, this is what happened. Regional caucuses were made to vote. that he, General Mosquito, the one who is taking unilateral decisions today, the one who is taking undemocratic decisions today, he, General Mosquito, he was the electoral commissioner for that process. And Honorable Ernest Nogbe was the returning officer at the DFNI auditorium where votes were cast. Regional representatives were made to cast ballots to determine whether Idrisu Haruna will be the leader, whether Aveji will be the deputy leader, whether Mubarak Muntaka will be the whip. All of that decision was made. Put back the photograph of Ofusu Ampofo and General Mosquito, and let me make the point. It feeds into that same point. That's the leadership of Ofusu Ampofo, which the NDC have gladly rejected. And this is the leadership of Johnson Asiedu Nkatia, which the NDC have elected. That's the story. What is happening is just a difference in leadership style. It's just a difference in one person's perception of what democracy and consultation should be, and another person's perception of what unilateralism should be and what it can achieve. One text message is telling us that Johnson Asiedu Nkatia has jetted off to Canada to be with his family in the heat of the confusion. I told you that he doesn't care. He's taken his decision. He's gone. He really doesn't care. He's chairman of the party. That's the decision he's taking. You work with it or you leave it. He's gone to Canada. You can please yourself. He'll be back. He's not going to go for long. He'll be back. By the time the parliament resumes, he will be here. He's a member of the Parliamentary Service Board appointed by Alban Sumanu Kingsford Bagbe, the speaker. So Johnson Asiedu Nkatia will come and take a seat when the parliament resumes. But now he's in Canada, they say. He doesn't care. But that's the kind of leadership that has been elected. And that's the leadership that we had complained about before. This is the leadership that has been rejected today. And NDC MPs are writing it out and saying it out, and they are beginning to understand what some of us understood a very long time ago. There's another conversation that we want to send you to before we go back to the text messages, and please get ready. This is another conversation by two people on social media that we picked. Now, we looked at a lot, so we decided to do a segment on reactions on social media. We decided to do that, so all of us were looking, and then we selected those that we think are useful for our viewers. Now, here it is. Dela Kofi is always feeling thoughtful, and he says, oh yes, while the change may appear to have been effected with abnormality, a new minority leadership in parliament has emerged. Denial of the obvious, he says, is more like watching kids deny they ate the chocolate whilst having chocolate smoothed all over their faces. In actual fact, he says, the deed is done, which is why folks need to accept the decision in good faith and rally around the new leader. Good afternoon, good people, and he's full of laughter. Dela Kofi. We don't know whether he's being sarcastic or whether he's being real, because Dela Kofi is an opponent of the NDC establishment. Okay, somebody then writes to him as follows. We'll go through it quickly. It says, Dear Dela Kofi, sorry, but what were the reasons given for the changes again? The NDC needs someone with an economic background to lead their front line in parliament? Question. Even if that was the case, how can any sensible person wake up and write a letter to parliament making changes to the leadership of MP's caucus without prior consultation? And people are defending this sordid, selfish, self-seeking, egotistic behavior of Johnson Asiedu Nkatia and his team. We didn't use those words. An NDC person writing on social media. He says, let's go through it again. Where is it? Making changes. He says, people defending this sordid, selfish, self-seeking, egotistic behavior of Asiedu Nkatia and his team. This behavior of Asiedu Nkatia, he said, is not only an affront to the representative democracy, it also reinforces the views that MPs' roles has increasingly become absorbed by political party interest. It goes on. The primary duty of an MP is representation and not communicating economic theories drawn from books, which barely have any use for our current economic challenges, he says. The second duty is to make laws, which is why the NDC needs a legal person in their front line at the plenary. What the leadership of the party has done is dangerous, he says. Both parties have close numbers in parliament, and if any of the parties, when it comes to decision making in parliament, whether caucus formation or electing leaders, has always been informed by an established political history. This is why in advanced democracies such as the US, it can take several hours, days of ballot casting among colleague MPs to elect leaders of their party. He's talking about the recent fight for the Speaker of the House of Congress in America, which took 10 days of different rounds of voting. The statement goes on. Clearly, he says, it is safe to say that Asiedu Nketia desperately wanted to become party chairman because of this sort of vindictive behavior. Ever since that latter-day boy called Sammy Gyamfi, no, that's not my word, those are not our words. Ever since Sammy Gyamfi made those disparaging and disrespectful comments about Haruna, Muntaka, and Bagbin, they have always thought of ways to get rid of them. This is one of the reasons why Asiedu Nketia changed his role in the party, because Mahama himself has become a tool for manipulation. He can't even see the things that could potentially affect his own ambition. If the NDC's view is that the economy is crucial going into 2024, parliamentary leadership cannot be used to achieve that objective. The party needs structure outside parliament that can do research and communicate units, and a communication unit that can solely deal with that. Until recently, how many people even follow the activities of Parliament? It is because of their controversies due to the closeness of their numbers that made people follow Parliament in recent times. If the party is concerned about its policy communication, they must put structures in place to deal with that and not rely on Parliament, because their duties are already explicit. Excuse me to say, the justification for these changes are, well, that he puts a word that we cannot repeat here. It's now half an hour past 10 o'clock in the night. This is Good Evening Ghana, and it's live. Okay, I was looking for a song. I don't know whether they have it. Do they have it? Please ask them whether they have it. It's an NDC rally song that I asked the producer to put together. If they have it, I'll just play it back. If they don't, I'll go through the 60 people who have signed the petition. Okay, so they have it now. It's ready. Now, this is one of the election events that I covered for the NDC in 2012. And it was a big rally, and I always use it in most of our documentaries. And on a night like this, when we are talking about the difficulties with Johnson Asiedu Nketia and the new leadership of the NDC, I think that it's okay to give my NDC friends some high morale. Remember this rally. Here it is.
Yo, Atami to mama and this double, what I say? Rebecca, Atami to mama and this double, Atami say NDC double, to mama NDC. Atami say NDC double, to mama NDC. Amisa Atami NDC double, to mama NDC. First lady Lordina NDC double, to mama NDC. Susu mutia obianya di ata miskaye hu to mama nie emesa ata nie ata.
I like the part that he says that Lordina Mahama Soka Atamos NDC double yezu yeza Atamils NDC double Jomama NDC double Lordina Mahama NDC double Jomama NDC double Asiedu Nketia NDC double Fifi Kwete NDC double. Yes, Sam George and I was in Commonwealth. You remember that? Yeah, we did that a lot. Play that drama for me again. I just love that. That day, I was at the rally and I said, this is something to behold. That again. Have a look.
Sana yakam. Yebeko. Yeah, Yesu. Yo, yesa. Atami to mama and this double. Yesu, Yesu. What I say? Yebeko. Yeah, Yesu. Atami to mama and this double. Yesu, Yesu. Atami say and this double. To mama and this. Atami say and this double. To mama and this. Mutia, Obianya di Ata miskayehu Jomama nie Emesa ata nie Ata.
May Professor Mills rest in eternal peace. That was a rally from 2012's campaign. All right, now a petition is going around, and this is probably the last part of the story, and then we go on to another story. We'll play for you an interview we conducted with the Attorney General where he talked about a treason trial that is being conducted right now, and also about constitutional amendment. We'll go to that in a bit. But now a petition is going around, isn't it? And they are signing a petition to say that they do not agree with Johnson Asiedu Nkatiah's decision to change the leadership of NDC in Parliament. I'm going to walk you through the people who have signed a petition and say something about some of them, and then we can understand what is going on, because it's getting quite confusing, because you would have thought that this decision was John Mahama's decision. Some people say it wasn't his decision. Some John Mahama stalwarts are against it. Some John Mahama stalwarts are for it. It's getting quite confusing. But let me walk you through the list, and then you can make the decision for yourself whether this is a decision of Asiedu Nkatiah, Fifi Kwete, and President Mahama, or it excludes President Mahama. Javier Sosu is the first one I put here. He has signed a petition. He's against the decision that has been made. Therefore, he's standing with Haruna Idrisu and Mubarak Muntaka. I'm not sure where he stands. I'm not sure whether he's a JM boy or not. I'm not too sure about Javier Sosu, where he stands in the NDC politics. But quite clearly, he's an NDC person. He's Medina MP, and he's important because his constituency is important. He says no to Asiedu Nkatiah. All right, this is Bid Zidin, my good friend. Bid and I were very, very close. It was when I gave him the nickname Bid, because in 2004 elections, we had an incident in the election night, and then that's where he got the name Bid. So when you see him and you say Bid, he will ask you that, what did Paul tell you? But he's a good friend of mine. Bid Zidin, he used to be the Deputy General Secretary of the NDC. Also him, Bid Zidin, says that no to Johnson Asiedu Nkatiah. Next is Clement Park, former Chief Vandal of Commonwealth Hall, so is my chief. Clement Park has been talking quite a bit on education. From Bulsa, he comes, and he is the Member of Parliament representing Bulsa. Dr. Clement Park also says no to Asiedu Nkatiah. Oko Vandapoy! This guy is a good guy, man. He's my man, you know. Oko Vandapoy, I think that he was one of the best mayors that we had in Accra. Oko Vandapoy did a real good job as a mayor. Oko Vandapoy also says no to Johnson Asiedu Nkatiah. And this is James Agalga. He was 1 year ahead of me in school, so I know him quite well. And we had a lot of debates and banters together in those days. James Agalga, a good lawyer, he's a former Deputy Minister of Interior, and he also says no to Asiedu Nkatiah. Now the list goes on. So ABF Husseini, former graphic overlord, and this is Abednego, Hassan Suhini, whose document we have read, Dominic Aine, who spoke quite a bit, and this was created by Metro TV. All of them say no to Johnson Asiedu Nkatiah. And then there's Teddy Safori Adi. He's also an MP. He says no to Asiedu Nkatiah. There's another list of important people. This is Linda Obinewa, Seydou Haruna, Thomas Nyakwampem, Abdul Latif Dan. They all say no to Asiedu Nkatiah. And then more big names coming in. Angela Ofori Wa Alolu, my good friend Collins Dauda, former minister, very seasoned member of parliament. Collins Dauda is probably one of the oldest members of parliament, Edward Nilante van der Poy, who actually competed against Haruna Idrisu for that youth organizer position, out of which there was a bit of violence. And then Isaac Adongo. This is a very powerful set. Collins Dauda, Emmanuel Nilante van der Poy, Isaac Adongo, my good friend. All of them say no to Johnson Asiedu Nkatia. A few more. Kwabena Donko, former Minister for Energy. We know him quite well. Soft-spoken, very, very clever man. Samson Ahi, very well known. Sam George, of course, we've heard him speak. And Yusuf Sulemana. All of them say no to Johnson Asiedu Nkatia. A lot more coming. Edward Bawa, whom we know. Eric Opoku, who was at one point thought to be a potential running mate to President Mahama. Ernest Nogbe, who is in there, and Ibrahim Mutala Mohammed, my good friend, who have been asking to apologize to the spare parts people because he said they were nobodies. Mutala and his friends also say no to Johnson Asiedu Nkatia. Wow. So that's the story. It's 20 minutes to the top of the hour. Let's see what people are saying on the text message. Mikhail, what are they saying?
So, Bra Kwam says, Paul, I didn't know this side of you, alluding to your singing from earlier. Lamte Bashid says, oh, as a student of politics, I will miss Comrade Haruna a lot. I learn a lot from him anytime he speaks. Very unfortunate, Asiedu and Mahama have jettisoned him from the front bench. He should push with his last drop of blood to rescind the decision. Now, Aaron again says, good evening to you. I can't in any way suggest that the entire leadership of the NDC political party, the largest opposition political party, but I think I can make comments on some of the decisions or actions they make as a political party. My point is that I don't think changing the leadership in parliament will serve them any good or help them achieve more political points outside parliamentary duties just to win the hearts of the people during the upcoming general election. This decision will rather create internal confusion, misunderstanding within the party. From the Ake Efia constituency, we have, good evening, Paul. As we speak in the NDC, things are falling apart and the center cannot hold. This afternoon, I heard Dr. Ato Forsing announcing a meeting with the minority members in parliament through a press conference. A. Is this Chairman Rawlings' National Democratic Congress? The NDC needs a flag bearer who is an economist, and the best person is Dr. Kwabena Dufo. Now, this from Master Planner Jr. He says no amount of reshuffling can save the NDC from being in opposition. They can even bring Donald J. Trump, but still 2025, Dr. Baumia will be the next president. And Aaron again says the NDC as a political party needs a serious branding effect because 1, there is an internal misunderstanding among the party members. 2, the party is known as a Zongo political party with few elites. 3, the party is known to be a Muslim-dominated political party. Now, lastly, Tofik from Ketekrachi says, good evening, Paul. So in this 21st century, we still have dictators like Asiedu Nkatia, who out of spite will decree to reshuffle the leadership minority in parliament. Interesting stuff. Let's get to you, Karen.
Okay, so this is from Kweku Amponsa. He says, good evening, Paul. So the very issue that the minority in parliament are complaining of the same thing they have done. The minority say the executive arm of government is controlling parliament. Then the NDC goes on to change leadership in parliament without recourse to parliament. If the speaker accepts his change, then he is a hypocrite big time. My regards to Kojo Poku. Also, Paul, this is a question for you. Edward says, Paul, why don't you apply to be the secretary of NDC? Al-Hassan Muhammad says, in fact, I wish this show would continue till tomorrow. Atta Bernard said, a mosquito you see cannot bite, but this mosquito, dear, even if you catch it, it will find a way to bite. This is an Anopheles mosquito. Nana Yao says, I don't get it. Is Avoka saying the thing is wrong or the procedure for the reshuffling is wrong? Which is which? Lastly, from Kobe, he says, Paul, this your polo, dear, you for take give me. Over to you, Anna.
Okay, so coming from Benjamin Tete or Lotte, he says, one thing that Haruna Muntaka and co should understand is that in every multi-party democratic dispensation, positions are not possessions. They are not bigger than the NDC. Therefore, the party will exist with or without them. And so they should keep calm and move on. This is coming from Kwame Abodie, KNUST Kumasi. Holy Richland says, Asiedu Nkatia has clearly shown us that he is incompetent and naive when it comes to chairmanship engagement. NDC is not ready to lead Ghana now. They can make all the noise for the power, but they cannot do anything better. Ghana should be warned. The earlier, the better. This is coming from Augustine Asari Donko. Owusu Atta Williams says, our proud current executives are focused on the 2024 election and the NDC is winning power and nothing will change it. Although I acknowledge receipt of some of the concerns by the members, Ghanaians and the world at large, but for the interest of the party, let's all accept the decision and move forward. Please note that my boss, Haruna, the former minority leader, is above his former position, and I advise him and the others to compete for flag bearership position so that when our former president, John Dramani Mahama, finishes his 4-year term, we shall get his replacement. Congratulations, Chairman and his team. Coming from Umaru, Somalia, you are doing a good job, Paul, watching you live from K2 South. Nelly Owusu Adami says, Paul, for your information, the mosquito doesn't consult anyone before biting. Also, the most important issue in Ghana is how the larger economy is affected, and certainly not the fate of 2 accomplished politicians. If indeed it is a bad news, then the MPP should jubilate. Dutch Stinkon is having an imagination in his head. He says he's imagining that during the parliamentary speaker election, Muntaka was kicking boxes while the General Mosquito was also sitting up there in the gallery and saying in his head that these people, they don't know what I will do to them when I become the chairman. Nabila Ibrahim is watching us live in Pachi in Northern Region at the Kumbugu district. And Yakubu Inua says, good evening, Ghana is the best. The mosquito has bitten and has left Ghana to Canada. Kai. Coming from Kamal Amasaman Bruni, Chairman Esiodun Ketia led his executives, and his executives have started exhibiting how rebellious and lawless they are. You effect a reshuffle and you do not see the need to consult your minority leadership. Former President Mohammed's hidden hands are engineering all these things, I think. Jidula Jejom says, Paul, come to think of it, Mr. Johnson Esiodun Ketia says in his interview that they need people with economic background and so forth. Now, talking of Mr. Avedi by Johnson Esiodun Ketia, he claimed that Mr. Avedi is or will not be contesting again, so that prompted his removal. Now, come to think of it once again, if Mr. Avedi were not to be going out of parliament, per Mr. Esiodun Ketia's submission, then he, Esiodun Ketia, and Fifi would have maintained him. Is that what he's saying? So what did Mr. Haruna and Mr. Mohammed too have to say before these removals? And lastly, from Shugri Jonas, the Apostle Paul is full of wisdom. Over to you.
Yes. Okay, so from Kobe Kitson, Atamils John Mahama, NDC double. From Awin Aka, interesting days in Parliament. The whips were maintained, so most likely it might not change voting patterns. From Mackenzie Nana Kweku Prempe, Paul is too much. Hey. From Dash Stinkon, sorry. During the parliamentary speaker election, Muntaka kicking boxes, whilst General Mosquito was also sitting up there in the gallery saying, these people, they don't know what I will do to them. From Isaac Nkrumah, 20K and still counting. Apostle Paul, preach on. Taju, 2.3K.
Okay, all right.
Taju, interesting times ahead in 2024 general elections. And lastly, Nana Hima Sapon, this platform is for intellectuals. Thank you.
Okay, let's look at let's get to another story. There's a treason trial going on in Ghana right now, isn't it? And the last time we interviewed the Attorney General, we had occasion to ask him about it, about the treason trial and his views about constitutional amendment. Let's speak first what he told us about the treason trial. Treason is people who are said to have attempted a coup d'etat to overthrow the government of President Akufo-Addo in 2018 or 19 or so, or they were preparing to do so. They are being tried. Let's find out from the Attorney General. Is it true that people tried to do that? What's happening with the trial? Here it is.
You are conducting a treason trial 50 years after the last one occurred. Your opponents say that you are not confident about the trial because you have amended the accusation, the charges. You have amended the charges. because you are not confident of the trial. Treason trial, you are seeing some people were preparing to overthrow the government of President Akufo-Addo.
Yep.
To what extent of your confidence about this matter?
100% confident, to the extent that all the accused persons have been ordered to open their defense. That means that a submission of no case made by all the accused persons was dismissed. The High Court, before December, ruled on a submission of no case by them after the close of the prosecution's matter. The prosecution, of course, bears a duty to commence because they bear the burden of proof, and we commence the evidence. We put in about 30 witnesses. I think I led about 3 of them in evidence before the DPP took over. And the evidence as adduced by the prosecution has been upheld by the court as worthy of conviction in the absence of a credible answer by the accused persons. That's the essence of submission of no case, that the evidence of the prosecution stand on its own without any answer by the accused persons can convict the accused persons. So how can I not be confident that when a submission of no case has been ruled upon in my favor and the defense
How many are they? How many are those on trial?
Oh, there are 10 accused persons.
So
Yes.
that's going to take long, isn't it?
Yes, yes, and I think that it's a very important matter. Indeed, the amendment to the charge, as you said, well, I actually withdrew the earlier charges in respect of which the accused persons were standing trial was treason felony. That does not require the punishment of death. It's a punishment up to life in prison. When I became Attorney General, with all respect, I reviewed the matter, which I do for most high-profile matters, and I took the view that rather than going through the difficulties that a treason felony will be subjected to, and that difficulty is only because a treason felony requires a jury trial. And a jury trial in Ghana has been fought with all manner of challenges. And in due course, the relevant amendment to the Criminal Offences or Procedure Act will be made to ensure that jury trial will be scrapped. So I took the view that rather than going through a jury trial, if the evidence against the accused persons warranted conviction for treason or amounted to treason, why not go through a treason trial? So I discontinued the treason felony, and then I filed charges of treason against them. Yes, I'm aware of the fact that it's a very onerous challenge because treason has rarely been done. A treason trial has rarely been conducted in Ghana. The only treason trial reported is actually Republic versus Oche, 1963 Ghana law report. Apart from that, there's no other treason trial reported. The only attempted treason matters were those done by the ESWA military tribunals of the AFRC and all that. But in terms of proper treason trial by the courts of Ghana, I think this will be about the second one. And I'm happy to know that, yes, our evidence so far has been found worthy of a response by the defense. So it's going on well, and we trust the courts to do justice.
Very interested in talking up his chances of convicting these persons who are on trial for treason. Let's hear him on constitutional amendment. I've been very passionate about constitutional amendment, haven't I? And I've been concerned about 2 articles, I believe, 128, which is the lack of upper limit for the judiciary, the Supreme Court, and also 78, which has no limit at all for ministers that the president can appoint. I put these questions to him because I believe that those two articles in the 1992 Constitution should see some amendment. This is the view of the Attorney General.
Now let's do some political questions, Attorney General. Because you are the government, there are 2 articles that I set out, Article 78 and Article 128. 78 is the appointment of ministers like yourself, executive appointment by the President, ministers of state. There is no limit on it. And people have criticized President Akufo-Addo for appointing over 100 ministers. And they're saying that if we don't limit this, another president may come and appoint 150 ministers, 200 ministers. So that's one. The other one is 128, which is quite critical, the lack of upper limit of the Supreme Court. Particularly Akufo-Addo's government, which is sort of birthed out of the Ghana Bar Association, if you like, is being accused of packing the courts and appointing judges upon judges because there's no upper limit. Do you think, in the whole conversation now about constitutional amendment, that we should look at 78 to limit the number of ministers a president can have? Because some people think it should actually be 19, which is cabinet, as delineated by the Constitution. And then also to limit the number of judges that we may have. 128 makes a minimum of 10, the Chief Justice and 9 others. should we say 13 final, 14 final, like America has 9 only, and they will have 9 all day long, all year long, 100 years long, they will have 9. We know that there are discussions in America now to amend them. Are you of the view that 78 and 128 should change?
Sure. So I think that these are quite interesting questions, and of course, always susceptible to all manner of emotional and political interpretations. Now, inherent in Article 78 itself is a limitation. The president is enjoined to appoint maximum 19 as part of his cabinet. But the president is, of course, at liberty to designate any agency, any part of affairs of state as a ministry, and appoint a minister responsible for it. Now, I do not think that there ought to be a constraint in that regard. I think the real difficulty with Article 78 is the requirement on the president to appoint majority of his ministers from parliament. Yeah. I think that that's a provision crying for constitutional amendment. I do not see it as justified, because that inherent in that is actually a situation where parliament will be undermined effectively. Because if the president is enjoined to appoint most of his ministers from majority of his ministers from parliament, clearly most parliamentarians will be looking over their shoulders for appointment into the president's government, and that effectively has an effect on the independence and efficiency of parliament and all. So I think it's a provision that has to be amended. Now, with regards to the Supreme Court, it's also pertinent to recognize that the Supreme Court of Ghana has a variety of jurisdictions. So the Supreme Court of Ghana is an appellate court. It's a court of original jurisdiction which deals with constitutional matters. It's a court that you have recourse to if an allegation is made, and a document that is required of a person to produce in proceedings before a court borders on national security, and therefore does not have to be produced. It has that jurisdiction under Article 135 of the Constitution. Has the jurisdiction in respect of presidential election petitions. It also has jurisdiction has a review jurisdiction, has a supervisory jurisdiction over lower court. So indeed, you see a combination of jurisdictions exercised by the Supreme Court of Ghana. And I think that the difficulty with, or the lack of efficiency with all respect, if at all, on the part of the Supreme Court, is not really in respect of the number of judges or the limit to the judges, but it's actually with respect to how these jurisdictions are exercised. Now, I'm of the view that in view of this multiplicity of jurisdictions exercised by the Supreme Court, it will be we'll be shooting ourselves in the foot as a nation if we go by the practice in the United States of America, where we appoint only 9 judges of the Supreme Court,
11 or 13.
I think that there ought to be some flexibility. And over the years, recently, there has been the development of some a convention whereby the Supreme Court is always 15 plus the Chief Justice, or maybe just 15.
How many do we have now?
So now we have 14 in all.
Including the Chief Justice?
Including the Chief Justice, with the recent appointment of
so now, that's not the highest number we have had. We've had 15 before.
We've had 15, we had 16. Maybe at the point in time, because of the imminent departure of certain judges from the
we had a bit more.
We had about 17, but not just for a few months when the Supreme Court judges were.
But the point you are making is that they have a lot of work to do.
They have a lot of work to do, and I think that I have always been discussing this with the Chief Justice. I've also been raising at the Judicial Council and all. That I think there must be a rethinking of the practice of the Supreme Court. I think we should rather go by, in terms of the practice of the Supreme Court, we should adopt the American example, where the Supreme Court does not entertain any case at all. The American Supreme Court, even though...
No original jurisdiction?
No, I'm saying it does not entertain just any
case at all. Okay.
So the American Supreme Court, yes, is a court for constitutional...
So that cases don't travel automatically to the Supreme Court?
Yes, so you may have a right of appeal to the Supreme Court, but the Supreme Court can exercise its power.
Whether they will hear you or not?
Or hear you or not. Because
in a preliminary hearing?
No, there can even be a practice whereby some judges, maybe 3 judges of the Supreme Court, make that determination. And indeed,
develop a roster for the court.
I've seen it in the Scandinavian court. We did this recent case in Norway, and that's a practice that I was quite impressed with, the Norwegian example. So an appeal is not heard as of right in the Norwegian court. You have a right of appeal, but the right of a hearing
I see. That's interesting.
Yes, it's not, so there's a plenary determination by
so
court
if they determine that they won't hear it, what happens?
That's it.
They return it to the Court of Appeal?
It ends the matter. And they determine whether they will hear it only when there's a new or important matter of law to be raised, not an important matter of fact. So the Norway Supreme Court does not determine appeals based on matters of fact. Does not entertain questions about the evidence. So you cannot say, as we say in Ghana, the court that omnibus appeal basis, the judgment was against the weight of evidence. You can't do that in
when it doesn't mean much.
Yes,
and it means everything.
It means everything.
It doesn't mean much.
The judgment is against the weight of evidence. It means you have to scrutinize the evidence and see whether indeed the judge was right in giving a verdict for or against you. I mean, it doesn't happen at all. It must be on account of a new and important matter of law. So
your point is that we may need sufficient Supreme Court judges. Okay,
yes,
about that.
So I think that, yes, if the Supreme Court is combined appeal, the Constitution, when it gives the right of appeal to a person from the Court of Appeal, does not set out the procedure for regulation of that right. That procedure for regulation of that right is reserved for the Rules of Court Committee under Article 157 of the Constitution. Article 157 enjoins the Judicial Council to set up a Rules of Court Committee. And so the Rules of Court Committee is set up and it develops the rules of practice for any court at all. So the rules of practice enacted for the Supreme Court must require that in terms of appeals, there must be a satisfaction of this basis before the appeal be heard. That does not, in and on itself, curtail a person's right of appeal. It's only a regulation of the right. Because indeed, even now, the reason or the basis for an appeal to be ruled in your favor is developed by the court itself. The court has set its principles. So in respect of this general ground, judgments against weight of evidence, the various cases over the years have spelled out what it means. So I think that there should be no impediment.
So on that, you think that we should hasten slowly to limit the numbers of the Supreme Court, because there's quite a bit of them. So now we have to reform the way they do their work.
Precisely. Rather, we should concern ourselves.
We are expecting a new Chief Justice this year. Is that correct?
Yes.
So when is it going to happen?
Well, the Chief Justice, with all respect, is at the end of May, 28th of May. So there must be a replacement.
So there will be a new Chief Justice before the 28th of May or after?
It has to be after. It cannot appoint before.
Okay, maybe an announcement made,
yes.
and then swearing in done later on.
Well,
so this will require parliamentary approval, isn't it? So nomination by the President and parliamentary approval.
By the President, a Council of State advising on it, the Judicial Council first, and looking at it, Council of State advising on it, before the President submits it to Parliament. So it has the participation of all these important issues of government of state, the Judicial Council, Council of State, and then ultimately Parliament of Ghana will consider the person.
Okay, so we'll wait and hear
must be a person.
Maybe by our next interview you can tell us who it will be.
We'll see.
Hopefully.
I think all of them,
let's get back to Parliament.
All of them are fit and qualified.
All those there now?
Yes.
Okay.
Plus those outside.
Plus all the senior members of the bar
because who
have done 20 years. 15.
Qualified to be on the Supreme Court.
15 years at the bar. So all those who have done 15 years at the bar should start praying.
Well.
Okay.
All right, so we are on concluding remarks. Mikhail, what are people saying about the Attorney General?
Right, so we've gotten this from Gideon Otredako. He says this Attorney General is too learned. Nana Baumia always makes me proud with every appointment. And that's it from me.
Okay, I have one from Kwejo Edupako. He says, Paul, in my view, NDC coup d'etat in Parliament against Haruna and Co. is undemocratic. Also, it lacks regional balance and must be condemned. Annette, do you have any for us?
Karim Ayamba Bashir says, Apostle Paul, the best journalist in Ghana, hate him or love him, he is a fantastic journalist. For the NDC party, it is now a Susu group. Over to you, Paul.
All right, okay, thank you. Let me ask you though, how was it? You were tensed?
Yes, I was.
But it's okay, huh?
Yes.
What are you studying?
Biological science.
Biological science at Legon?
Yes.
And you like media?
Yes. I do.
You do? But this is hard media. This is not Instagram.
Very different.
Very different, eh?
Yes.
Okay. Nice. Welcome. All right. Viewers, thank you very much for your time. I have an important announcement to make. Tomorrow, I will be doing something that I terribly enjoy. I'll be paying a visit tomorrow to a certain old man. Yeah? He knows he's old, so I say he's old, it's fine. Now, the house that I'm going to visit, this man is over 80 years, I have to say, 85, I think. How old? Okay, I'll mention his name. He's 85 or 86. And the house where I'm going to visit him tomorrow is the same place that I have known him for the last 40 years. And so tomorrow I'm going to tell my mother that I'm going to see this man, and he's going to ask me, hey, they want to say, a friend is saying, then my mother always remember their names because we grew up with them. Tomorrow, I'm going to East Cantonment, in the same place I've been going since 1983 or 84, to visit Brigadier General Nunu Mensah. Please tell him that the arrangement is on. I'm coming. The fufu should be ready at 11. Those of you who are interested, I'll post pictures on social media when I see Nunu Mensah. It's going to be a fantastic chat. I've been going there for a very long time, 1983. Same house in East Cantonment. That time I was in about, 7 or 8 years old? Yeah, I was in Garrison in those days. So his son, who is a bit older than me, I think he was a year ahead of me. He's a medical doctor now, practicing in England. I think it's called Fifi or something like that. Fifi Mensah, some Kofi or Fifi. Yeah, he was our friend. So we'll go there and play football and all of that. And I go and visit General Nunu Mensah, and I tease him all the time that when I knew him, he was Brigadier General Nunu Mensah, 83. Up to today, he's still Brigadier. Why? They don't want to promote him? That's the conversation I always have with General Nunu Mensah. I can't wait. I always relish these occasions of talking to these seasoned old people. I'll post pictures and I'll report on my visit to Brigadier Nunu Mensah. I don't know what you're going to do this weekend, but tomorrow evening also, Manchester City play Arsenal in the FA Cup 1/16 stage, and it's at 8 o'clock. That's going to be something to behold, isn't it? And then we'll hang around the weekend. Those of you who play basketball, join me, and then let's have a good weekend. As I said, look at truly going to Canada. I'm sure he'll be back very soon. Thanks for watching. Good night.
Metro TV, insightful and inspiring moments.
Has Christianity always